All right. We'll go ahead and get started if everyone wants to find a seat.
Okay, is that us? Yeah, I think she.
All right.
It's like Hindenburg.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jessica Maldonado. I'm the past president of the Clyde Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the Chamber, we really appreciate you being here tonight. I'd like to welcome all of our Chamber members that are in attendance, along with 5 residents that came and joined us here tonight. We really look forward to hearing from this candidate. I just wanted to set a few kind of ground rules or opening remarks first. The Clyde Chamber of Commerce endeavors to promote and model the principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. So in conducting tonight's event, we appreciate that all participants will act in a respectful manner consistent with these principles. So just a couple logistics. The forum will start with opening remarks from each candidate. Then we'll take a quick 5-minute break to collect any additional written questions. So if you didn't get a chance to drop them on a note card and give them to us at the beginning, you'll have a chance. We'll take a quick break and you can write down questions on a note card and give it to us. If you're online, you can keep those into the chat during that time as well. So you can enter them verbally. Then following questions, each candidate will also have a few minutes for some final remarks. So without further ado, we're going to get started and we'll give candidate David Bell his chance to open remarks.
Okay. We said we can walk around, right? Just gotta stay within the.
Is everybody hear me okay? I'm not really used to doing the mic thing, but I'll do my best. So my name is David Bell. Just to give you a little bit of a brief synopsis of who I am. I've been a mortgage banker for the last 22 years. My mortgage company is here in Clyde as well. I'm also in the military. I served 6 years in the United States Marine Corps. Took 10 years off when I started my civilian career. Went back into the military, joining the Air National Guard. Thank you, Air National Guard, 16 years ago. So I thoroughly enjoyed my time in the military. I thoroughly enjoy my job as a mortgage banker. But I bring those up because I'm something of a history buff. About 15 years ago, I met that young man over there, Councilman Ted Weaver. He's a realtor. I'm a mortgage guy. We got to know each other. Found out he was a city councilman. I took him to coffee. I said, talk to me about this. I have no clue what this is. I was completely ignorant of the situation. We got to know each other. Subsequently, I started hitting him up with different questions throughout months, years, until 2013 over that. And we had one of our councilmen step down. And this was an interesting situation because I said, hey, we're going to do an appointment process. Ted reached out. He said, hey, you should think about running for the appointment. Come on in, answer some questions, tell us a little bit about yourself. I think you do a heck of a job. So I went in there. I was scared. I was scared like I am right now. I'm an introvert. You'll see my hand shake. It will happen. Look, went in there, answered some questions, thought I did a pretty good job. There were a handful of other people there. One individual happened to be someone who had run for the election previously, did not win. There was a couple business people like myself. And then there was also Susan. Susan, are you here today? Councilman, okay, thank you. Councilman Susan. I did not get appointed. Susan did. And the reason being was she had the experience. She had taken the time in the previous committees. She knew her stuff when it came to the city. I wanted to know my stuff, but I wasn't there yet. Our now Mayor Edwards actually sent me an email on that. He said, hey, you did a really good job. Stick with it. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. That one. And then the mayor at the time, Scott Sharksina, reached out and said, hey, would you be interested in being on the Parks and Rec board? And I said, I have no clue what that actually involves, but sure, I would love to do that. Let me do it. And for 7 years. 7 years was on the Parks and Rec board. 2 of them, I was actually the head of Parks and Rec board, and I thoroughly enjoyed learning all the details of what it takes to be on that board and getting to know each and every single one of the city council members, the mayor, and much of the staff. And so I bring this up because it really shouldn't be about a letter behind someone's name when we decide to vote next Tuesday. It should be about service. Thank you very much.
PF candidate Fremont make the mini.
Thank you. One of the things David and I have in common is we're both introverts. So you probably also see my name shaking up here. So I've got this thing to try to steady me a little bit. I want to start by thanking all of you for showing up tonight, and also to the Clive Chamber of Commerce for organizing this, and it's Jessica, our moderator, as well as all the Clive City Council people and all of our elected officials that help make all of this possible. If you don't know me, my name is Shrikant McLenane. I've been a practicing attorney for more than 8 years, and I believe I can bring a skill set and perspective that complements the skill set and expertise that the current city council has to continue our history of success in this community. As an attorney, I have a professional duty to do what's best for my client, whether that client is an individual, a business, a city. I look for what's best for their interests rather than what is my personal belief or my personal feeling on a particular matter. On a bit more personal note, I was born and raised, thank you. I was born and raised in Iowa, and I spent my formative years in Burlington, Iowa. So I'm familiar with how special Iowa really is. But Clive is in a league of its own, even when you compare it to other Iowa communities, right? It is one of the, if not the best place to raise a family, which is why I brought my daughters back and my family back to raise our family here. I have a 4-year-old and an 18-month-old. And you know, we lived in Clive since 2010, and we take full advantage of the Greenbelt Trail Park. It's one of the crown jewels of our city, but we also love Clive Festival and Food Truck Fridays and all the things this community offers. And that's really important, but what really makes Clive special is the community. It's a place where my kids call my neighbors auntie and uncle, right? You don't get that everywhere. We all know this is a great community to live in, to raise a family and to retire, which I can't say I experienced myself, but I've heard it's a nice place. But there's always room for improvement. There's no such thing as perfection. And when I look to solve a problem, I don't want to solve the symptoms or treat the symptoms. I want to look for the root cause and solve that. It's more difficult, but it's a lasting change, and it's a better change. So I'd like to share a few of the ideas tonight, just briefly, about some of the solutions that might bring about some improvements to some of the root causes that I see. One is maximizing resident engagement. And that means hearing from residents of all perspectives, all backgrounds, all lived experiences. And we need to hear from these diverse backgrounds because these different experiences and perspectives, they lead to a stronger solution at the end of the day. My background, leading a global team spread out over 50 countries and 8,800 team members, I have to do this every day. You know, we have policy deployment that affects multiple cultures, multiple business units. And the only way I can make that possible is by listening to what each of those businesses and individuals are looking for and what they need to succeed, and finding consensus, and finding policies that work for all of those different cultures and business units and needs. So an example of this is that I spearheaded a company-wide portal that's available to all team members around the globe to raise questions, send ideas in, make requests from my team, and to access resources and training materials. I think that's something that we can use in Clive. And I also think that a Clive-wide community-based committee that provides input on initiatives across the community would be another strong step toward bringing more voices to the table. Another thing that I mentioned earlier is, you know, we talked about the Greenbelt Trail, or I talked about the Greenbelt Trail. I feel like I'm having a conversation, but the Greenbelt Trail really is one of our crown jewels. But we should do more to help residents access it more easily, right? We've been talking about some of the multi-use developments that the city has been planning. one of the things that I would push for is to help bring the Greenbelt Trail to the residents of these multi-use developments as part of the developer's plan. And that's not just to help the families, which it certainly will do, because my family, for example, I take my 4-year-old to run around the park that's right behind, near our house, so that she gets all of her energy out. So when we get her home, she basically just falls in the bed and falls asleep. But I realize that not everybody has that sort of access. And that's something we need to change. But it also benefits our small businesses, because if we tie the Greenbelt Trail to our economic development centers, we're able to bring more foot traffic to our local businesses. And you can go jog or bike or run to your favorite coffee place or your favorite bar. Or maybe you just want to go to the grocery store and pick up a couple items. That should be completely doable. We also need to do more to strategically implement renewable energy along the Greenbelt Trail and just more widely across the community. I was speaking to one resident who said, there's no reason why we couldn't take the less ideal areas to recreational development in our green spaces and put up renewable energy sources like solar panels. And then finally, I think the undercurrent that ties all of this together is strategic implementation of technology. Now, some people think of technology as a 4-letter word, right? It's just a barrier to access. But 9 times out of 10, that's because of poor implementation of the technology itself or the process tied to it. If you take a process, a bad process, and you put it on a computer, all you have is a computerized bad process. But instead, if you're more strategic about it, and you come up with ways to decrease the barriers, increase access, that's when technology succeeds. And that's something that I do in my day job as a technology attorney, day in and day out. Again, these are just a few of the ideas that I have. I'm excited for the opportunity to speak to you all tonight, and hopefully we'll learn more about each other and not just a one-way street. And yeah, let's continue the wonderful community that we have. Thank you.
Well, for those opening remarks and sharing some background about each of you. We're going to take about a 5-minute break. I know we have some more folks that joined us. We want to make sure everyone has a chance to get a question in. If they'd like, there are some postcards along the back, and we'll be walking around to collect those. And if you're on virtually, you can drop those in the chat. So we'll take a quick break to collect some more questions.
Is there anyone sitting next to your wife?
I don't think so. No, that's fine. I was actually thinking that as I was talking. That's why.
All right, if everyone wants to find a seat, we're gonna go ahead and get started again. All right. Thank you. And if something comes up and you think of a question while they're talking, if you want to give it to Christy, she can help pass it my way. So we'll be able to still try to speak as many in as time allows for. So we're excited to get started with the Q&A portion. This one, I think Shrikant got to go first last time. We'll let you take this one first, and we'll kind of just go back and forth so everybody gets to rotate who gets to answer first. This one is about the Greenbelt. We actually had a couple related, so I might tag on a follow-up question after this. But this question says, the Greenbelt Trail and Park System is an important part of Clive. Could you speak to your experience and vision for this important Clive asset? I know you touched on that a little bit, but I didn't know if there's anything else you wanted to expand on.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, the resident that submitted that said it best. It's one of the most important resources we have. There's a lot of talk about expansion, but less so about what that expansion looks like, right? And where we prioritize necessarily, right? There's some projects that are in development or in their plan, but we don't have as much as far as tying it to our multi-use developments or our revitalization efforts, our redevelopment plans. I think that's going to be where some of the bigger, like the longer term payoffs are going to come from. Because again, as I mentioned in my opening statement, it not only ties it for residents to be able to access and utilize, but also our small businesses that are in those same multi-use developments. But it's also important to remember that our green spaces are a chance to use for other resource conservation and sustainability initiatives. You know, we have water erosion controls already in place, but we can take that a step further. We can do renewable energy sources like solar panels or you know, wind power, things like that. We should definitely be looking more closely at what those opportunities look like.
Same question.
Yep.
Cool. All right.
So when I first got in, I'm a walker and a doctor, so she had to put blue microsyrup in my pounds to say I get shocked if I get outside the blue pounds. But so when I first stepped into the Parks and Rec, I believe it was around $200,000 a year spent on maintenance, upkeep, and care of the Greenbelt Trail. I thought, well, no, that's interesting. And I'm going to go back to our drink over at 515 Brewery numerous times throughout tonight. It was just really good beer, right? It was really good beer. But so
100%.
we actually had a beer a while back and actually had a chance to have this conversation. What we did was when we got done with our beer, we walked around behind 515 Brewery onto the bike trail. We walked down behind those businesses. And I pointed it out to him, to Sean. I said, hey, take a look at this area right here. One, look at that bridge. Right now, we have a little meandering stream. When it rains and it pours in April and May, that rain collects and it goes down here and that water will go up to this bridge level. It's absolutely insane how much water we get during that period of time. Number two, as we walk down there, how many times do we have to jump off the trail because the bikes are going through? The trail isn't all that wide anymore. And then as you're in that area, and this is real close to 73rd Street, you'll also notice there's a bunch of backs of buildings, and it's not overly attractive. It really isn't. But one thing, well, there's numerous things I truly enjoy about being in the military, but one of them is you get to travel quite a bit. I've traveled around the world, I've traveled throughout this country. One of the places I got to spend a lot of time at was San Antonio. San Antonio had a very interesting situation. San Antonio, anytime it rained, that city would flood. So they said, hey, what are we going to do about this flooding? So they created this canal system. And then they looked at the canal system and said, well, this is kind of ugly when it's not, doesn't have any water in it. So they filled it up a little bit, they put some gondolas in there, and they started building businesses around it, shops, restaurants, bars, places to take the kids for ice cream. We could do the same thing right there, 73rd Street to 86th Street, and make the Greenbelt be a location, that spot be the place you want to take your family for a meal on Friday night versus going downtown to Des Moines or going to West Des Moines. We can make it a destination location. We could widen the street, that would help with the flooding. There'd be numerous pieces to the flooding issue. Trust me, that was just one piece of it. Widen the street at the bottleneck. But we'd also be able to widen the trail so you can walk down that trail while people are biking. You don't have to worry about getting hit. And also what you could do is you can have those businesses facing, this is what I mentioned at 515 Brewing. They can't even really market to the trail. But people have to get off the trail and then they go up and get their beer. But what if those businesses were able to market similar to San Antonio and the Riverwalk area? I truly believe if we just start looking at some of the other cities that have had similar situations, we don't always have to recreate the wheel ourselves. We can look at what other places have done and say, hey, that was a success. Let's do this. And I tell you this, if we had more businesses lying there that were profitable, those businesses would be paying taxes in the city, and that would be paying for that bike trail. So anytime somebody looks at my pamphlet, they say, what do you mean trying to get the bike trail paid for? That's what I'm talking about. 73rd Street, 86th Street. Why the heck not make that a place that we all want to go and hang out? Thank you.
This question is a good follow-up, I think, to both your comments. So this person said, I believe both candidates have expressed an interest in making the Greenbelt and other 5 parks more self-sustaining. So please explain, and they're asking for specifics. What does that mean to you and Clive? Are you suggesting user fees or somehow incenting more private enterprise along the Greenbelt or contributing to it? So how, maybe taking a deeper dive, how are we going to help get there? Do you want to go? Wait, David's turn. I've already lost track of the second question.
All right. Yep.
So a little bit deeper dive. So right now we're spending a lot of money on the flood zone areas, all these areas over at 73rd Street. Again, we have a bottleneck right there. When we started to develop the western part of Clive, along with Urbandale, along with Grimes, along with Waukee, all developing these new houses, everybody had to have their houses and the sloping backyards, and all that water ends up going into these little creeks that all combine and end up right there at 73rd Street at a little bottleneck. And so it floods quite often. Subsequently, what we've been doing as a city is working on purchasing a lot of this land. Because well, we can't have citizens there. There's actually a lot of dangerous situations when there's flooding in that area. They're actually talking about like we had to evacuate people from that area. So we're already spending some of this money purchasing this land. There's also money that they're trying to, from time to time, utilize from the federal government. But the problem is that comes with a lot of red tape. And one of the things being is if you use that money from the federal government, you're not able to redevelop that land. It's got to stay as is. So that's not a really good way to handle this, especially for a city that is landlocked at the stage of in the next 5 years, we're not growing anymore. And that's something that we all have to be mindful of as citizens of Clive. So if we're already spending some of this money for this land, I think the next piece of the puzzle is getting the businesses involved in helping us create this community. And I think we actually are starting to establish this. I think Susan, Eric, and I said as soon as I get to that next point where I'm actually fully on the city council, I want to be part of this committee where we are working with business owners and saying, hey, this is what we want to do. This is our game plan. This is our vision for 73rd Street, 86th Street. How are you as a business person, how are you able to help us? We've got this desire to do so. And I think it really comes down to a conglomeration of business owners and the desire of the people and the state government all together. Thank you.
So this is, like the question said, that's actually something that David and I, we see we're pretty closely aligned, right? I think it's a little bit of nuance there, though. The thing that I would look to try to achieve is rather than bringing the businesses to the trail to begin with, which I think, I think that's an excellent idea. And I definitely think it has its place, but I think the thing we want to look for first is where can we bring in these redevelopment plans where the developers are going to bring in the trail to those residents, to those businesses. So in that way, we get an expansion of the trail, more of our community can access it, and we haven't had to charge a user fee or have residents pay for that necessarily. Now, one thing I can't help myself because I am an attorney, I love red tape. So if it's something where we can get access to additional funds, I'm all for that. Let's find a way to get those funds, fix the areas that need fixed. And if they truly are, danger zones and flood zones, that's not necessarily something that we want to develop for commercial use potentially. So again, that's where those sustainable energy solutions come into play, right? There's no reason why you can't put solar panels up on a pole in an area that's prone to flooding. So that I think it's a bit of a nuance, but I think it's an important nuance in that we want to expand the trail to these new higher density commercial and residential areas to give more people access to the trails and to the bike paths. I agree that there are areas that are not as well maintained, but we all have to look at what can we do with the resources allocated. Now, one of the things that will feed into this, in my, in my kind of idea for this, is that community portal, right? It's a way where residents could upvote areas that they think are problematic or that they would like to see improvement. And that would help the city decide, oh, hey, yeah, we've got a bigger issue here. And so let's reprioritize how we allocate the funds to fix those areas or improve them. So I think those are some solutions I think that would take priority over bringing a business directly to the trail. But to be honest, if we have the wherewithal, we should do both.
So we have a couple kind of economic, finance related questions to kind of bundle some of these topics together.
We have to do math.
Right. Yeah. So one is a question about is having low taxes compared to other cities around the metro a major objective, and I guess how does that help set Clive apart? So, Con, if you want to go first on this one.
I should have sat down. So yeah, I mean, I'm proud that we have a community that can provide the level of services that we have for one of the lowest property tax rates in the region. But I think of this more as any other family or household budget, right? Taxes are one aspect of the health of a community, right? And it does impact, those taxes, they do impact what we are able to provide and not provide. But what we need to look at as a community is what are the services that we need and want? And how does that relate to the money that we have coming in? And that's where the difficult choices come sometimes. For a household budget, I can't always tell my daughter, yeah, let's get the new game system or the new dress or whatever the case may be. We have to prioritize the funds that we have to come up with an overall strategy and priority as to what we're going to spend money on, the services that are important to us. So again, I'm probably going to be touching on this a few times tonight, but that community portal and the community-based commission, those can be great insights into what is important for our community and what are the services and strategies that we need to undertake to do right by our community and to keep our community as special as it is.
Is having low taxes compared to other cities a major objective?
Thank you. So on the way here, I had to go fuel up. I got a Jeep. It was a lot of money. Inflation seems to be hitting in all different aspects of our lives right now. It's the reality that we have. We are spending more money for the basic things that we always had. We haven't had to deal with inflation all that much in the last 10 years. but now we're starting to see it. 3 weeks ago, I got to actually have a really enjoyable vote. I got to vote for the 7th consecutive year in a row of keeping the tax rate the same. Now, the first 6 years, I can't claim success. That wasn't me. I wasn't on the city council. I was on the Parks and Rec and on pickleball. But for the 7th year, I got to do that. And I felt so proud to be able to say, no, we're going to keep that tax rate at the exact same rate. So I'm very proud. Now, we have one of the lowest tax rates in the entire metro area. That's awesome. And that's something I wish to maintain. Conversely, we have some of the best service of any city in the metro. The last 2 snows, you start to notice the stuff we're actually doing this. And you realize, oh my gosh, West Des Moines doesn't hold a candle to us when it comes to clearing snow. Not a candle. Even higher. Just kidding. Sorry. But again, I go back to the reality of within 5 years, we are completely built out. We are completely built out. You use the term, hey, having to make some tough decisions. And I completely concur. There will be that point where it's like, do you waffle on the service level or do you start to increase taxes? Clive likes the fact, and a lot of residents like the fact that we have the lowest taxes. That's why they were here. We need to maintain that. And what that means, though, is we have to start looking at redeveloping the areas that are not at the same or similar tax base as what we have over on the western side of town. That is the reality. It's wonderful. When I first became a member of the city council, I was drinking from a firehouse. Matt McClellan was awesome, but he's like, you know, I'm going to give you a lesson on how to be in the city council very, very quickly. And some of the things that we talked about was just as we're looking at new areas of development, what we need that assessment per acre to be. And he's like, hey, on the western side, you can see that we're needing that. That's going to work. It will work for what we're planning on doing going forward for the next 20, 25, 30 years. But what we have to do is look at the redevelopment on the east side of town and say, how can we get that tax base higher? And a lot of that comes with commercial development in areas. A lot of it comes with not having to spend the money on the trail because the businesses are paying for that. But a lot of it comes down to helping individuals with their houses, keeping them updated. I remember when I was auditioning for the role of city council, and I mentioned the idea of being neighborhood finance authority involved in some of the eastern side of the city. For those residents that want to update their housing, but they can't find a for it. Let's see if we can get some grants that they're already doing for certain areas in the Des Moines area. Why would we not be trying to do that here? We can increase the taxable values of some of those houses. Why the heck would we not? Because that's what we really need to do. We need to work towards the post-development and help people increase their level on their houses. If we're going to do things, sustain the tax rate where it's at, sustain the level of service that we currently have. Those are the things we need to do.
Ask for a lapel mic.
Turn it on. All right. Thank you. We also have a few kind of campaign or more background related questions. This is kind of a fun one. What are some of the things you've learned while outdoor knocking during the campaign? So maybe things people have told you or things you've heard from folks. So what are some of the things you've learned along the campaign trail? So David, you're up first.
One, my residents love the dogs. And there are so many dogs in the city of Clyde, it's crazy. I started taking pictures, I asked for permission, I started taking pictures of all 3 dogs I see. People just love their dogs. That's absolutely a huge thing. And just so you guys know, I'm not just saying in my neighborhood. Since the special election was announced, I have been from 73rd Street and all the way through the 7th district of the city of Clyde. I haven't hit the 8th district yet, that's a sweet thing. But, thank you. But, and that's door knocking, so many doors. Dogs. Number 2, I mentioned this to Ted. The Ring doorbells, there are so many Ring doorbells in the city of Clyde. So many Ring doorbells. But The big thing that I really found was, and I really appreciate what you call it, the Clive Connect, the Connect program that you're talking about.
The community portal.
Thank you, community portal. The one thing I did notice is, and it's very similar to what I found out in mortgages. A lot of times people don't want to get engaged, or people don't want to learn something new until it affects them personally. And that's what I've seen. And Park Street was a great example. I walked up to a gentleman, he was counting the feet on the side of his house because he's going to plant some trees. I started talking to him, and we spent 30 minutes talking about the new eco cells that are all on the side of the road. And he was in an uproar about these eco cells. I'm like, all right, talk to me about it. Let's have this conversation. And then I talked to another gentleman across the street from him. He's washing his car. And he's like, oh, let me show you something. I'm like, okay. I didn't even get to 119th Street that day. I just said, okay, we're going to hang out on Park Street and have this conversation with folks. But it's interesting. The first gentleman, even though the city did their darndest to get engaged with the community at that moment prior to them actually doing the work, he wasn't even involved at that point in time. He didn't get involved until it was already done. And then he's like, well, I don't like this. And I'm like, you've got to get yourself engaged prior to. Matt and Pete, the city council, the employees from the city of Clive are absolutely amazing at doing the outreach for the citizens. Part of it comes down to the citizens saying, hey, I hear what you're saying. Let's have that conversation, getting engaged at that moment in time, not after the fact where it's like, well, now I don't like it. So that's one big thing that I picked up. The other big thing is a lot of people are just very, very happy about what we have for amenities. That's one of the biggest things. We are a community where people are very happy with that, what they have. I don't think we have major upheaval type things that we have to deal with. We have minor adjustments. And that's what we need to do to continue moving forward so that what we have right now becomes a legacy for the next 20, 25 years. And the next person who stand here in 25 years be like, yeah, those guys did a hell of a good job. So that's what I've learned from mine. Thank you.
So a couple of quick notes. I think we might have talked to the same people. The other thing I've learned is that my daughters are way more effective at door knocking than I am. But no, in all seriousness, you know, what David was saying, you know, does ring true. There is a lot of discussion around Clark Street in particular. When I was door knocking that street as well, it was very much. I spoke to a woman who came out and said, "It's incredible what they did. How could they do that?" Right? But you know, to David's point, yeah, the city does do a good job at communicating to the residents that are, you know, that are going to be part of these projects. But do we really want to just rely on Matt and Pete with the fabulous job they do? Do we want to take more time out of their day to do this when there are other solutions that we can use to get to the same result or a better result, right? I'm not sure it's just minor improvements. I think we do have some areas that can go beyond minor, but overall, we are a great community. I agree with that. But the other thing that I heard a lot when I was door knocking is, I'm so glad you're running because it feels good to see somebody that looks like me run. And that means a lot. That representation matters. The automatic validity that you feel, that you're feeling that you've been heard, that's important. And it's something I want to show my girls that we can do in this community, because I know we can. And that's very uplifting to hear that, and it does make me a little choked up. So I apologize for that. But that's one of the most consistent things I've heard as I'm born up. So thank you.
This one, kind of piggybacking off that, kind of along the same campaign theme, someone asked, this special election has felt a little more partisan than usual. So how do you feel about that? And I guess going forward, how can we all work together?
So I think David alluded to this, you know, when we first started our campaigns, we actually went to 515 and had a drink, right? So I don't see this as a partisan race. I don't see this as a partisan solution or non-solution, you know, if you're one side or the other. And like I mentioned, you know, my profession is an attorney, and we are trained, we are duty bound to provide conflict-free advice that is in the best interest of our clients, not what lines up with our personal beliefs, not what lines up with how we identify ourselves, but with what is best for our clients. And so, you know, I'm looking forward to working with the city council in whatever capacity that looks like. And I hope that's true for you as well, David. And I think I know it is. I don't want to speak for you. So I don't see that as a partisan issue. City council is not a partisan race. It's about what's best for our community, and that's really where it's at.
I may have had a slightly different experience. So our part, I totally concur. We actually had this conversation whilst we were having the drinks, right? Where we said, gosh, when you really look at it on the spectrum here, you're like, you may be a little over to the right, I may be a little over to the left, but we're pretty much the same. In fact, we even kind of joked about it. I'm going to tell the joke. I asked the mayor if I could do this, and he said, it's okay. I said, man, you're kind of like me, just a better tan, and I'm kind of like you, just with a better hairline. And I'm like, no, I think I'm calling Mayor Edwards' hairline plan, honestly. He said I could tell the joke. It's okay. No, it's okay. I got to know Ted early on. I got to know the other city council members shortly thereafter, after getting on the Parks and Rec board. I'm proud of the fact that I actually didn't know that the mayor, and now mayor, that many of the city council members would, if they were Republican or Democrat. I was very proud of that, but I didn't know that until way later, because it didn't matter. It did not matter. Boy, things have changed. Boy, things have changed. So I did have slightly different reality when this all happened, because I had put on my information. I'm like, I want to maintain that nonpartisan approach. And then within days of getting appointed, I'm being told, well, you're a far right-wing conspiracy man. Well, you're an anti-vaxxer. I'm sorry, but I'm in the military. That choice of whether I was going to get this shot or not was not something that I even had. I've had more shots than probably anybody else in this room. I got the damn anthrax shot back from the Marine Corps time. So to say that I was an anti-vaxxer, that's ridiculous. And then it was like, well, you're standing next to somebody, so you must be okay with what happened in DC last year. And I'm like, well, that's really interesting, because the person that you said that wasn't even the person that you thought it was. But yet, these are the type of things that are happening on a daily basis. And it's misinformation. And here, let me stop for a moment, because I need to clarify something. It is not you. It is not you doing it. You have been absolutely amazing. We have maintained a conversation between each other back and forth throughout the entire thing. But there are people that have been attacking. There are people in this room that are part of that. And it is not something that's been super cool. It's not been something like that. It's true, that'd be one thing. But when it's not true, they don't even care. We're going to post it. And I think what was said was, well, this is just how it's done. This is Iowa. This is not a presidential election. How about we try to be truthful about what we're doing? How about we actually have a question? Let's go ask the person. My contact information is not hard to get a hold of. But what happens is some fictitious information is put out there. Oh, and it's blasted on social media. It's never recanted after they find out that's not true. It's never recanted.
Right.
And though that's not you, those are some people that have been supporting you. And it's not been cool. It's not something that I appreciate, again, not for the city of Platte. No, again, I love the fact that I didn't even know that, I had no clue what party you were. John, same thing, no clue. You guys are just really cool people that really care about the city. And that's what I can say about every single one of the council and the employees. So I wish we could go back to those days, because that's not what I felt throughout the last month and a half. Thank you.
In the spirit of working together, we have a chamber question to throw in here too. How can the chamber or the business community partner with the city to keep Clyde moving forward as a great place both to live and work and play and have fun? So I think, David, are you up for
Yeah,
something?
yeah. Keep on funding and funding.
So I actually got to go to, help me remember the name of the place, because I'm standing up here on the other side. Or we go to the second. Thank you, Clyde Community Service. Thank you, Ted. Appreciate it. Got to go to Clyde Community Services. And we talked about a program that is still in its infant stage, and it's called a mentorship program. And it's for folks that are maybe somewhat underprivileged, that maybe are folks that are from immigrant populations that have just moved here. And I love the fact that in the United States, we're all about bringing folks in. We want to give people that American dream. But I don't think we as Americans do that great of a job of giving them the rules to the playbook when they get here. They're like, well, now you're here, good luck. But what if we had a mentorship program that was in correlation with just the thought process of, hey, this is how you do a simple budget. This is how credit scores work in the United States. You want to buy a house? That's part of the American dream. These are some of the things you're going to want to do if you wish to buy a house. Do you need help writing a resume? Do you need help finding a job? Having this mentorship program would be absolutely amazing. And I see a correlation. Having this mentorship program would go hand in hand with what I'd like to see transpire over at the Diamond Public Safety Building. We just moved the police fire department now. We're going to be doing so much with we have just a Harbach Center now, but make it into a community center which also has a focus on education. I had one of the teachers from one of the local schools say, is there something that we could do, a correlation between the schools and possibly businesses and whatnot? I said, yes, what I would love to do is help teach some of the children about credit scoring, about creating a simple budget, about things that they want to know as an adult. Again, buying a house, and then train the trainer situation so they can come in, volunteer time at the community center and teach these things. I think this is just a wonderful way. How many people that work for the different businesses in the Clyde Chamber would be willing to help volunteer just a couple hours every now and then to help teach a class is something that they know very, very well, but would be so helpful for everybody else. I think the mentorship program, I think the community center on Harbach would be absolutely amazing to help the new immigrant folks that move here, give them that chance to raise up their standard of living. I truly believe that. I mentioned that when I went for the appointment, and I hold firm to that. Thank you, ma'am.
Would you mind repeating the question?
Yes. So how can the chamber or the business community partner with the city to keep moving it forward as a great place to live and work and play?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I think the mentorship idea is fantastic. I would wholeheartedly support that, but I would actually say that I think there's more than just our immigrant populations that would benefit from that, right? There's a lot of civics lessons that we've lost. We don't really know how to, and financial responsibility as well. We don't know how to necessarily set a budget when, you get thrown into going to college or community college or right after you graduate from high school. You don't get taught those things necessarily. So I think having that program available and making it as widely available as possible is important. But there are other things that we should be looking to do as a community as well. I mentioned some of those in my opening statement, so I won't go in depth into those again. But implementation of technology can help bridge the gap for folks that they can't necessarily run in the middle of the day to a certain program, or maybe they don't even have transportation that day, right? So having the ability to give people access to those resources, even if they can't show up at a specific time or date or place, is important. But then as far as the business opportunity side, how do we pair that with our business development ideas? You know, this is something where we should be looking to what our neighbors are doing. What are other communities doing that we can learn from or partner with them, right? Wouldn't it be fantastic if we had like a Western suburbs restaurant week, kind of like Des Moines does, right? Where we have some sort of prize or contest to see who can hit as many restaurants in 5 as possible. Yeah. Yeah, and so we should continue to expand that though, and look at how do we make that into the other regions that we can go into, right? So we have neighbors in Johnston, in Grimes, West Des Moines, Urbandale. All of those are right for regionalization efforts to get more bang for our buck and to get more people involved. Like we can invite more of those community members in and make it more of a concrete, organized plan to do that logistically. And then finally, what I'll just end on and touch on real quick. The regionalization efforts go beyond just our business initiative too. You know, David correctly mentioned that we are very quickly coming up on landlocked status. So it's going to be really important to work with our neighbors to get more efficiency out of the services that we need to provide. I know we've done some of that. The city council has been proactive as far as partnering with Urbandale and Windsor Heights. I know that's being worked on as well. That's something that we should continue to do and expand. We should look at that beyond just the first responders. Well, what other areas can we regionalize and learn from? Like we already utilize our neighbor school districts, right? So most of our kids go to either West Des Moines or Waukegan school districts. So I think that's important to keep in mind as well when we're thinking about these regionalization or these business opportunities to improve residents and citizens' lives.
Thank you both. This one, you both kind of touched on diversity. This question was, do you believe it's important for Clive to have both employees and residents with diverse backgrounds and ethnicity? And if so, what can we be doing to promote that? Yep,
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, that's something I wholeheartedly 100% agree that we should do, right? There should be more representation. And we need to bring more voices to the table. I think I said that in my opening statement as well. So I'm actually the co-chair of the Drake Law School Alumni DEI Board, Diversity, Inclusion, Equity and Inclusion. And I've also been part of the national group that is basically it's somewhat of a think tank for all of the largest companies you can think of. But it's for legal diversity diversity within the legal community side. And so you learn a lot through those programs. But the one message that I can't get out of my head is the one that I shared about with the door knocking question. You know, the amount of messages that I've received from people saying, I'm so glad that you're running because it's somebody that is closer to the lived experiences that I've lived, or can understand the cultural differences that there are when you grow up in a predominantly white community with different cultures and different traditions at home. But that doesn't mean you're not part of the community, right? We need to be proactive about that, make those people feel heard, and make them feel represented.
Well, I mentioned that I'm in the international government. Thoroughly enjoy doing that job. Just finished up being a first sergeant a year and a half ago in the Intel Squadron. Really enjoyed it, but it kept me behind the iron curtain of Secret 12 stuff. What I do currently is the Human Resource Advisor for the Air National Guard 152nd Month. That role is for diversity and inclusion. I was taught from Georgetown University, their diversity and inclusion coursework. I'm the one that actually teaches that and carries that on throughout not just my days, but even over to the 185th as well. And it is most definitely important. I'm all for more voices at the table. I'm all for helping everybody. And by no means do I ever wish to take away what someone's life experiences has brought them based on where they grew up, how their family life was, what color their skin is, what sexual orientation they are. But one of the main things that I bring up when I'm teaching this course as well is that it should not be the end-all be-all. It should not be the decision-making item. You need to look at the individual's resume. You need to see, okay, does this person hold the qualifications necessary for this particular role? Is candidate A, candidate B, candidate C, do they have these qualifications? First and foremost, diversity and inclusion should be something that is factored in as a weighing factor. It should not be the determining factor. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of my time to go back to the Harbach Center, because I truly believe that if we're able to make that a community center where the individuals from that community actually make it their own, involving the education process, bring their cultures to that building and say, hey, I want this stuff here. I want some of my artwork here. How great would that be for everybody to be able to feel what's going on in their lives? Let's tell us a little bit of a story about that. I would love that. We are not Clive, Iowa tribal. No, we're a melting pot. We should get to know each other. My neighbors, myself, we get to know each other. It shouldn't just be, hey, this is one group over here. We just hang out with this one group. No. Get to know each other. That community center would be absolutely amazing melting pot of all the different cultures in that area. I thoroughly would enjoy that to the utmost. Thank you.
I think this question came in online. It was about how many years have you lived in Clive, and how has that helped you learn or know what's best for the community?
So I moved to Clive in 2008, and my mortgage company actually started out, my mortgage career actually started down on Swanson Boulevard, way before that. So I've been in Clive for a damn long time. As a citizen, if you're not fully engaging, I honestly don't think you'll have certain aspects of, hey, I love the fact that our tax is low. Hey, I love the fact that I get to go on the trail. And you're going to kind of go through this, hey, it's just really cool. It's a nice community to be in. It wasn't until I got on the Parks and Rec board, which I want to go back and thank you for that phone call, asked me if I was interested in doing that in 2013, because it opened my eyes so much to what this community brings to the citizens. It got me engaged. It got me interested further and further. And I was asking Ted questions about some kind of stuff early on, but I was, like I said, I was still very ignorant of the situation at that point. It was once I got on the Parks and Rec board, and I started to realize, all right, so the city council handles all these different aspects of managing the city. Well, each one of these different boards manages a subsection of that information. They're working with the city employees, and they're saying, hey, this is what we need to do over here. We as the board, in the Parks and Rec board, we've come up with our determination, hey, this is what we really think we should do. And sometimes it was really important stuff, like, hey, what's going on with Food Truck Friday? Or it was maybe less important stuff, like, hey, how are we going to name this park? But I did really enjoy naming Canary Park. I got to tell you, that was a true highlight. And then there's some things where at first you might think, okay, this is kind of a weird thing, but pickleball being so much of an issue, but pickleball can be an issue. I'll tell you that. You get some people that are on pickleball tournament teams, and then you get some folks who say, hey, I just want to come up and play. And they're like, no. So there's like rules to this whole thing. And trust me, if you don't know, you're gonna know. You're gonna learn real darn quick. And so I gotta tell you, just living in Clive since 2008, that in and of itself probably wasn't the key for me, but getting engaged and actually being on the board, being on different committees, being on the Greenbelt Master Trail Planning, oh my gosh, eye-opening. So anybody in this room that's interested, please get engaged, get on board, get on committee. Oh, did we not talk about that when we were having coffee 2 weeks ago? I said, hey, get on a board, get on a committee. You know the city council members now, let's do this. Let's get engaged, let's learn the details, because the devil's in the details. And once you learn them, then you can make active change and make things even better. Thank you.
Repeat the second part of the question.
Yes, absolutely. So how many years have you lived in Clive, and how has that helped you learn or know what's best for the community?
So I've lived in Clyde since 2010. I'm barely in the millennial generation, just to level set here. So like any good millennial, when I went to law school, I moved back in with my parents, and they lived in Clyde. And I was amazed at some of the city services, right? And I didn't fully appreciate them at that time. You know, I was very focused on law school. But I've lived in different states, different cities, different countries. I mean, I've lived in India, I've lived in Seattle, we've lived in Wisconsin, Missouri, but I call Iowa home. I was born in Waterloo, I was raised in Burlington, and Clive is my home. And what I've noticed, even after living in all those other places, Clive is the best community. And that's why I'm raising my family. And as the father of 2 young kids, one of the things I love best about Clive is all of the family-oriented services that we offer, right? Food Truck Fridays, Clive Festival. I think they've already all been said at this point, so I don't want to list off a whole list here. But even the Greenbelt Trail, you know, I mentioned, we use that as much as we can to let our kids just have safe fun. We're not worried about them when they're on the Greenbelt Trail. That's a community resource. I'm not worried about, you know, them being in the middle of the street or you know, even in the front yard and the ball goes into the street. Those are safe areas where I can sit with my kids while they're playing on the play set or running along the trail. It's a resource. And even, you know, I think David, you mentioned this, the city services, right? Like clearing the snow, they are second to none. And I can say that with experience, right? I lived in Kansas City for a short time in college. There'd be days where you'd have snow on the ground in the streets. You know, those are things that you can't recreate easily. And somehow we do all of it. And that goes back to some of the budget issues that we were talking about earlier, right? We want to maintain those services. And we want to maintain our low tax rate. And so the way we do that is by getting efficient, being strategic about what we do. You know, like I said, like I mentioned, my company spans 50 countries, has 150 locations with 8,800 people. That is a lot of people for a team of, my team is 3 people. That is a lot of people to manage for 3 folks. But we do that using efficient solutions. And we implement strategic initiatives that get us the biggest bang for our buck. So before we spend a single dollar, we ask ourselves, can we hit a dozen birds with this $1? And if the answer is no, let's keep looking. Thank you.
We have 2 questions left, but they're somewhat similar, so I'm going to try to combine them before we go to closing remarks here. So one said there were many ideas thrown out that involve investment or expenditures. So where do you foresee the city getting these resources from? And the one that kind of complements that, which we've also kind of covered tonight, is with Clive being a landlocked community, how do you keep a competitive tax environment while continuing to offer a high level of services? So I think in general, kind of how do you foresee any investment and expenditures coming in, knowing that we're a landlocked community and have a low tax rate?
Yeah, that's an important question. Maybe okay. That's an important question. It's a tough question, right? There's no single answer to that, right? But I think it starts with, again, going back to what I was just saying, efficient use, right? So, and I know the city council's already looking at this, right? We were looking at the multi-use developments. That is efficient use of land. You get as many folks as you can into a redeveloped area, and you bring in commercial businesses as well. That is a strategic implementation of that land. It grows that, it revitalizes that area, it grows that tax base, it helps pay for some of those services, and you're attracting more residents, you're attracting more businesses. I think that's one of the key things we need to focus in on, is how do we retain the people we have already, and how do we bring more people into our community that we know they'll feel the same way we do right now. And that's not just residents. That means attracting businesses as well. And infrastructure is an important part of that, right? I know that that's been on the national stage as well, but I'm thinking more locally here, where we have a lot of folks that have changed the way they work, right? I am one of those people. My company is based out of North Carolina, and we're, like I said, we're a global team, so we're spread out across the globe. But the way that I'm able to complete my work is using the infrastructure that Clive has in place, namely broadband, right? And that's important for a lot of folks. So I know the Clive City Council brought in MetroNet. That was a fantastic move, right? That is a great step toward building our next generation of infrastructure. But the thing is, we can do better. We can improve. There are new communities, or there are other communities out there where fiber optic internet is now no longer the gold standard. And maybe I'm a little competitive in nature, so I always think of myself as, Clive reflects me. It's my home. And so I always want to be the best at whatever I do. And I think we all want to do that to some level, right? We all want to show how great Clive really is to everyone, not just in the region, not just in the state, everyone. I think those strategic investments, bringing in MetroNet, bringing in other commercial or business partners to help bring some of these services in. And I even mentioned with multi-use developments, make it part of the developer's requirements to expand the greenbelt, to connect. Obviously there's going to be some practical considerations taken into account there. But put those in the partnerships that we're doing with these developers and businesses. That will help us attract the residents, the future residents, and the future businesses to help sustain the level of services that we have, even though we're starting to see some funding loss at the state level. And hopefully that's getting corrected, but that's where we need to be prepared.
Have you ever met somebody who you just know they were born to do a particular role? That was going to be what their career was. Just know it. I knew this with my daughter, and then she started, first time she got a pencil or a crayon in her hand, you're going to be an artist. That's what she did. She's doing that now. Matt McClellan, our city manager, is one of those people I've said no numerous times. I'm like, dude, you were born for this role. So part of it is, my answer is that it's kind of nice because especially with a lot of the current planning, it's already being done. They're already doing the thought process. They're already doing the SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, the opportunities, and threats. They are doing these things. You talk about regionalization with the other cities. We are already actively engaging with each one of these different cities. Urbandale, Windsor Heights, as much as I sometimes the struggle bus one, West Des Moines, Waukee. We're already doing a lot of this stuff. So I've got to give props and kudos to what the city council have already done, as well as the city management, because, oh my Lord, they are thinking about this, because it's not just, hey, I want to do this. Now you got to think of secondary and tertiary scenarios that you didn't even think could possibly happen, but it ain't Murphy's Law, now it happened. So that's the first piece of that question. The second piece goes back into a lot of the things I was already saying. It has to do with the eastern side and the western side. So as we're finishing up the development on the western side, it's going to be all done in the next 5 years. The reality of it is, the tax base in those areas are actually what we need them to be. We need that to be where it's at to maintain the sustainability. What we do not have is the same level of tax base over on the eastern side of the town. And so this is where things get kind of interesting because you have people that are like, I want all this stuff, but don't change anything. And I'm like, well, that's not how things work. You know, sometimes we have to have, like you said earlier, those difficult conversations. You know, you mentioned the idea of bringing the trails to the people. And I'll tell you, as you discussed the idea of bringing those trails to the people, one time when I was over off of 73rd Street, I was pulled right into the folks' house. They're like, come over here and take a look. They want to put a trail right back here. This makes absolutely no sense. We have to have those conversations with these folks first and foremost to realize you have a secondary, you have a tertiary issue with that idea of trying to bring the trails to them. Additionally, those added trails, that's added cost. If you don't have the first piece of the puzzle, and that is the commerce actually providing the tax base to do those additional trails, now you got a problem. How are we paying for that? We've got to have that commerce, and I truly believe we can do two major things with one significant change. And I feel bad for the person who does it because I hear me talk about this all the time, and that is 73rd Street. And the bottleneck where it floods, and the businesses of 73rd Street, 86th Street. I truly believe if we look to other cities, if we look to, like I said, San Antonio and the Riverwalk, we could solve one major threat. That's all the money that we're spending on flooding. And at the same time, start building up the businesses in that area and increase the tax base over in that area. We will get that side higher, similar to where we're at over on the western side of town, to where it is now sustainable. So yes, you can do this. I truly believe you can do it, but it comes with not the idea of development anymore, it comes with the idea of redevelopment. And with redevelopment, it comes with the idea of having that conversation with those folks, because I don't want to have another situation where somebody didn't get engaged early on, and now they're mad. Let's get them engaged up front. And that means, maybe it just means one door knocking for me. I don't know, but as a city council member, I'm more than willing to do that. I was originally really scared of doing it. You knew that, I told you that.
So was I.
Man, I'm scared. Went to my neighbor's house first. When I did my first one, I was scared. Month and a half later, I'm not scared no more. I actually enjoy it. Steps in, pretty cool. But you get to know what the people are saying. Clark Street's a great example. An in-person individual was not engaged with the initial conversation. Then he wants to complain about it. Like, the point of complaining should have been over here, and they were asking for your input. As we're looking at redeveloping, we need to really have those conversations and get folks engaged early on. Thank you.
So we actually made it through all of the questions right on time. So we're gonna end now with closing remarks. I think, David, it's your turn to go first again, and then we'll have you close.
Well, this one's gonna have to be completely extemporaneous because I didn't even think of closing remarks. So my name is David Bell, and I've lived here since 2008. I got engaged in the community in 2013. Prior to that, my claim to fame was I was the guy with the really scary haunted house on my block. And it is. I mean, it scared kids with that house. But here's the thing. When I got engaged and when I got on the board and got on those committees, I started to really figure out that I love my city. And my city is truly unique. It's not just like everybody says their city's unique. We really are. We have a lot of things going for us. A lot of other cities can't. Have a second winter and have that snow come in, and you'd be like, wow, yeah, I can get around town. And those guys over in West Des Moines, custom. Yeah, just the way it is. But the way we do this, we have to be really mindful about our decisions going forward. We have to be really mindful. We have to do our due diligence, and we have to have folks that we're engaged to begin with, who've done the steps at the beginning. I'm a big proponent of folks joining the military just so that they get an understanding of how that's like. Because here, one thing I'll tell you, you don't join the military and automatically advance up the ranks. You got to serve your time, you got to pay your dues before you advance up. And then just walk in and now, oh, now you're Sergeant Bell. No, that's not how it works. You got to pay your dues. So that's where the boards, that's where the committee, we're constantly looking for citizens to step up for these and learn. So city council, you don't just go right into that spot. well, I'm here, I want to do this. No, that's not what this is. There's some major decisions that are taking place. Major decisions that are going to affect the city for the next 20, 25 years. The last 7 years, I've been practicing, I've been learning, I've been doing the stuff that nobody really pays a whole lot of attention to unless you're really in pickleball. I've been doing those things so that I'm ready for that next step. That's why when the special appointment came back up, I said, hey, you should try for this. And I said, yeah, I'm going to try for it. And I'll fight for it. I hope I can earn your vote. I hope our conversation has allowed me to earn your vote for the day. My name is David Bell. Next Tuesday, I'd love to see you guys all get out there and vote. Thank you.
So as I mentioned, my name is Shrikant Miklaneni. Born and raised in Iowa, and I've called Clive home since 2010. And one thing I wanted to just leave you with is, I mentioned my role as an attorney, and it's not because that's the only way to get into politics or anything like that. But what I will say is that being an attorney gives you a skill set that does lend itself to the municipal process and the legislative process. I've been part of the Iowa State Bar Association, and I've been on section councils that specifically speak about what are the legislative initiatives that the bar is going to recommend to the state legislature. So I think that's important to keep in mind as well. And like I mentioned before, this is really about bringing more voices to the table, your voices, and the rest of our community. And the way we do that is not by having one person with all the experience, right? There's no one person that can solve the entire community's goals and look to solve the issues that we are going to face. It's about finding consensus. It's about raising the voices and being proactive, using barrier knocking, technologies. That's what's important. And that's where being an attorney can help. I have experience bringing people to the table. That's been my entire career, building consensus, mediating disputes, negotiating contracts. That's something the city does all the time. And I know I said this a little tongue in cheek, but I really do love red tape. It is something that it has a big place. And I might be getting a little too far off the mark here. Okay. But again, I just want to leave you with the idea that we need to raise the voices in our city, as many as we can. And to do that, the way I see this is that we bring in technology. And I know I keep repeating that, but it's important because it's an efficient way to bring voices to the table. Now, I know we weren't able to cover, I'm sure we didn't cover everything that everybody has questions about. I welcome you to reach out via email or phone or text or my website. The only thing I do ask is if you call, maybe don't call past 11 if the little ones are going to be sleeping. But I'll also stick around tonight for as long as we can to answer as many questions that you guys may have that you haven't had a chance to ask. Again, my name is Shrikant. I hope you will vote for me on the 29th. But more importantly, I hope you vote. Thank you.
Probably the most one-time one of these has ever done. So on behalf of the Clive Chamber, I want to thank both our candidates. We give them one more quick round of applause.
I want to thank all you guys. I did not honestly expect this many people to come in here. Oh my gosh, you're engaged community. Thank all you. Most definitely. Thank you.
And also a quick thank you to the city of Clive for giving us this great space tonight, and Triplet Office Solutions for providing some extra furniture. And thank you again for joining us. It is great to see the turnout and the interest. So have a great evening.